Halloween's my favorite time of year, so I thought it would be fun to tell some of my favorite stories about the haunted house that I grew up in. There are plenty of stories, so I could make it a series and tell a new story every night until Halloween with plenty left over to spare. The first one I'm going to tell is when my son was about 3 years old. It had been raining really hard and the power had gone out and the sun was setting, and I knew we didn't have enough candles in the house and I didn't know when the power would come back on, so I drove about 5 miles out to my mom's house. Well, as soon as we got there, we had to go down into the basement to get the candles, which was fine. It wasn't really scary. I didn't get any weird vibes or anything. So then we come back upstairs. I set him on the couch and I'm putting his shoes on him, and then we hear my mom go, "Wait, who's here?" So Austin, who's 3 at the time, is sitting on the couch and he whips his head around and he's like, "Nana!" And then all of the color drains from my face because I knew that I'd heard it, but seeing him react to it is what scared me the most because my mom was at work. Before I could even react, we hear again, "Wait, who's here? Don't leave." And Austin's like, "Nana, Nana," and he's jumping off the couch, and I grab him by the back of the shirt and just whisper, "That's not Nana." As soon as I say that, the footsteps that's coming up the stairs start to increase and speed up, and I knew I had about 30 seconds before whatever was coming up the stairs would come around the corner into the living room where we were at. So I jerked up Austin off the couch and grabbed the candles and just bolted out the front door. I didn't even shut the front door. I ran out to my car, threw him in the car seat, and then as I was getting into my seat, looked back at the front door and saw the front door just slam shut. Now, we know the name of the woman that haunts our house because we actually got to meet her before she died. And my parents had known them very well, but I got to meet her. I was about 8 years old, and she told me it was really weird, and I can still see exactly where we were sitting when she said it. And she said, "If I could live here forever, I would." And she has. And that's only one of hundreds of times that she impersonated my mom to try to scare the shit out of all of us. So if you want to hear more stories, comment below. Happy Halloween! Since Halloween's my favorite time of year and I grew up in a haunted house, I'm telling some of my favorite stories that happened while I lived there or even after I moved out. Okay, so this particular story, we'll call it story number 2, happened when I was about 13. I grew up in the 90s, and this was before internet or phones or anything like that, and I loved to read, but I would want to stay up super late at night to read and would kind of get in trouble for it all of the time. So I had like a flashlight and I would lay under the blankets and read Sweet Valley High books. So this one particular night, I'm hiding under the covers reading my book. It was at a really good part, and I feel someone sat down on my bed. So I'm like, "Oh man, it's my mom. Like, I'm busted. Like, I'm gonna get in so much trouble," because she had already told me to go to bed like twice already. So I just decided to pretend like I was asleep, and I thought maybe that would keep me from getting in trouble. But then my mom, I thought, starts like patting on my leg, and she says in her own voice, "It's okay, honey, don't worry," or "Don't worry, it's all gonna be okay," something along those lines. So then she gets up and I hear her walk out and she shuts the door. So I throw the blanket off and I'm like, "That's weird. What was that about? What's gonna be okay?" So I was kind of worried at that point. So I immediately get up and go into her room. Well, it was dark and my dad was asleep, and so I'm like, "What is going on?" So I walk around and do that scary thing where kids just kind of stare at you while you're asleep. So I'm just staring at my mom, and she like jolts awake, and I said, "What were you talking about?" And she's like confused and I could tell she had no idea what I was talking about. And I said, "You just came into my room, sat on my bed." I was like, "Are you mad that I was reading my book?" And she's like, I haven't been in there. I've been asleep." And I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean you haven't been in there? Who was in there?" And she's like, "Oh, you must have been dreaming." And I was like, no, like I was reading my book and was convinced I was busted and going to be in trouble, but no. So Miss Pike, the ghost that haunted our house, she felt the need to comfort me, I guess, and she was cool with me reading, and maybe, I don't know, but that was weird, and there are plenty more. Come back if you want to hear more of them. Stories from my haunted childhood home, part 3. If this is my first time on your For You page, I grew up in a haunted house, so I'm going to be telling all the stories until Halloween. I've already posted 2 others there before this video. Now that that's out of the way, let me tell you the story of the first time I had anyone from my new school come spend the night at my house. I was like 12, 13. I was in 7th grade. I just transferred schools and made a new best friend, and she was going to come and spend the night. I didn't tell her that my house was haunted because I was scared if she knew that she wouldn't come, and I didn't want to risk that, so I just kept that information to myself. The way my house was laid out was, it was 1 story with a basement, but my mom had like redone one side of the basement, so it was just kind of like another living room, like play area, and then the other side of the basement was where all my dad's tools and stuff were, and you had to go through that part to get outside. So from the back of the house, it looked like a 2-story house. That's important. So we were downstairs like playing board games and stuff, and then we decided to go outside and jump on the trampoline. So we go out there, we're jumping on the trampoline for what feels like forever, and then she says, "Oh, hey, look, your mom's watching from your bedroom." So we start waving at my mom, and my mom's waving back, and so we start acting like how kids do and doing stupid tricks and stuff, and then my mom's like, "Yeah, you know, like, good job," and like clapping and everything. So we just kept on doing this for probably like 5 minutes. And then we're laughing and just acting silly, and we hear my mom say, "Who are you guys waving at?" So we whip our heads around like, what? So my mom is standing beside the trampoline, and we just immediately look back up to my bedroom window, and a woman is still standing in my bedroom window. While we were in the basement, my mom had gone out the front door and then went around and came back down and was getting some things from my dad's shop that was behind the trampoline, and we didn't know it. So she had been in there for a while, like gathering stuff there, and we had come out the back door, so we'd missed each other. So Melissa, my friend, was like, "Well, if your mom's here, who's that in your window?" So she had on, like, remember, this is like 90s, like 92, 93. She had on like this black dress thing with a white bow, and was leaned over on the windowsill, and she's still like waving at us like she did not care that we had put 2 and 2 together. So we kind of freak out. We start screaming. We refuse to go back in the house. So my mom tries to diffuse the situation and calm Melissa, and she's like, "Oh, you know, maybe you guys are just seeing something," even though she knew, she saw what we saw, and that it was clearly Miss Pike, right? So I explained to Melissa, "Look, sorry, I should have told you this before, but my house is haunted, but she's nice," right? Like, she was even like cheering us on, right? "It's fine, it's fine. Let's just go back inside." I wish I could say that that was all that happened, but there's more. But to keep this from being a really long video, come back for part 2. So now we've got Melissa calm, we're back in the house. So I decided that maybe we should start making friendship bracelets. And back in the 90s, we used to make the bracelets like they do for Taylor Swift now, with the big beads on them, and they're braided, and then you could put like things that said your name and stuff like that. So we decided to make best friend bracelets. We're sitting in the floor. Melissa's asking me questions about Miss Pike. I'm telling her the story about how she used to live there, blah, blah, blah. So then she's like, "Well, have you ever tried to make her mad?" And instantly I'm like, "Please don't," right? Like, don't try to make her mad, because she's very active just when she's in a good mood. Like, what is she going to do if we make her mad, right? So please don't. So Melissa's like, "No, she scared us. Let's make her mad." I'm like, "Don't." So she starts saying things like, "Oh, Miss Pike, you're not real," and blah, blah, blah. And so I scoot back some, and she's like, "Why are you scooting back?" I was like, "Because I don't know what she's going to do to you, and you're making me nervous." Like, so she said, "Oh yeah, Miss Pike, if you're real, then do something about it." Well, at this time, I'm sitting in the floor, and I'm holding one end of the string of bracelets with the heels of my feet, and then I'm braiding them. So my feet and my hands were tied up at the time, and she's sitting about 3-4 feet from me. And out of the tray, one of those big beads flies across and hits Melissa right here, like dead center of between her eyes right here, and leaves this huge like whelp on her forehead. So we both just kind of go silent, and I look at her and she's looking at me, and we're like, "Oh my God, did that really just happen?" So she grabs her forehead, and then we both just scream again and take off running out of my room, and we go tell my mom. Now, my poor mother she's looking at this girl that's there for the first time with a big red welt on her forehead. So what is she supposed to do? Like, hi, you know, sorry, Melissa's mom. I know this is her first time here, but our ghost hit her in the forehead with a bead. You know, like, what is she supposed to say? So my mom's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Do you want us to take you home? And then Melissa's like, no, this is awesome. And thank goodness she's as weird as me. So she loved it. She loved that she did it, but she was terrified. So she wrote Miss Pike an apology letter. And she still talks about it to this day, and we're in our 40s, but she wrote Miss Pike an apology letter telling her that she was sorry that she mocked her, that she 100% believes her, and all this stuff, read it out loud, and then taped it to my door and made me leave it up on my door for like 3 days so that this ghost could come read this apology letter in case she didn't hear her, right? Because she didn't want her mad at her. So I wish I could say that that was the end of the things that happened to Melissa, but it's not, because she came back several times before we graduated years later, and more things happened to Melissa, which I could talk about later. And once the rest of the girls and kids and everybody else found out that there was a ghost in my house and Melissa had experienced stuff, everyone wanted to come to my house, and everybody that did had something happen to them. So come back tomorrow for part 4, or story 4. I grew up in a haunted house, so every day until Halloween I'm telling a different story that happened to me while living there. This is the 4th one, I believe. I was around 14 or 15 at the time of this story, and my mom was with me when this one happened. We were wrapping Christmas presents, and downstairs we had like a huge area that had an area rug on it, but then that rug was so huge it had another like 8x10 rug on top of that. So I had ran back upstairs to get more gifts and tape or something like that, and then when I got back downstairs, my mom was like, what'd you do with the scissors? I was like, I left them down here. I don't know what you're talking about. So she's like, well, I set them down here and now they're gone. And so I was like, well, what's this? There's a lump under the carpet. What's that? Now we were in the center of this huge 8x10 rug. And like I said, it was on top of another massive rug, right? So I just kind of looked at her and I was like, do you think it's the scissors? And she's like, there's no way the scissors could be underneath this. And I said, well, it's got to be something, like, let's move the rugs and see what it is. So we had to scoot the coffee table over, move the couch back, and roll up not one rug, but 2. And in the center of the floor were the scissors. So the scissors that she had just been using, she set down, went back to get another present, went back to get the scissors again, and now they were under 2 carpets, well, 2 rugs. And that was just the beginning of her moving things. One time my watch disappeared, couldn't find my watch anywhere. And do you remember those old CD cases that were like a canvas material and then they had the hard plastic in it? Well, one day I had like knocked that CD case over and noticed like a knot underneath it. So I had to take all the CDs out, remove the plastic case, and in the bottom of that was my watch. So it eventually got to the point that when something went missing, we knew she had taken it at that point because we had looked everywhere else. So we would just ask her, can you please give it back? And then it would just randomly show up somewhere. I grew up in a haunted house, and every night I'm telling a story about something that happened to either me or one of my family members while growing up in that house. When my brother was around 3 or 4, he was really into trains. That was like his favorite thing. So for Christmas one year, Santa brought him the Walt Disney World train that came with the entire like downtown area. So it was like if you were on Main Street or whatever and had the castle behind it. Well, the train was super cool because it would go forwards and backwards, but it would also blow smoke when the whistle went off. My brother was obsessed with that thing, and he would play with it all day long, so you would constantly hear the whistle going off, and it was like, woo, woo, and it would go off all day long. Well, he started doing it at night. So one night, my dad had had enough, and he told my mom, he's like, you're going to have to explain to him that he can't be getting up in the middle of the night to play with that. Like, that's a daytime only toy. So my mom decided to go and tell Grant, like, okay, that's enough. It's time to turn it off. And she got to the doorway and remembered that my brother was in bed with them that night. So she said out loud, Ronnie, Grant's in bed with us. And the train was still blowing, and he's like, you're gonna have to go in there and turn it off, go turn it off. And she's like, I'm not going in there. And as soon as she said that she wasn't going in there, it stopped. So the thing about this train is it's not just like something that could misfire, because there were several steps that had to be done to make the train even turn on, and especially make the whistle blow. So you had to turn, there was a button on the train, and the train had batteries, and then there was a button on the remote to turn it on to get the train to even work, but then there was a smoke button, like the whistle button, on the remote. So you had to turn the train on the train, then turn the remote on, and then push the whistle button to get it to blow. So there were multiple steps. Well, so my mom the next day goes to check it out and see what was going on with it. And so she goes to play with it, and Grant's like, no, it's broke. Well, he had already been trying to play with it that day and couldn't get it to work. And so my mom looks at it, and there's no batteries in the remote. So, yeah. So now there's a train that went off in the middle of the night with no batteries. So my mom said that just became like a once or twice a week thing, where the train would come on in the middle of the night, whether they took the batteries out of the train or they took the batteries out of the remote or whatever, it would work and come on, and it would only do it by itself in the middle of the night. So there's that. Come back tomorrow for another story. If you're just seeing this, I grew up in a haunted house, and every night I've been telling a story about something that happened to either me or one of my family members while living in that house. This one's a scary one, and I was debating on whether waiting till closer to Halloween, but there are some other ones. So I decided to go in and tell this one. I'm telling it in my car because I don't want to tell it in the house and bring it in there. That would be my luck. My brother and I are 5 years apart. So he was like 7, 8. I was like 13. He got a new bunk bed for his room, and it was one of those that, like God said, we grew up in the early 90s. I graduated in 98. So this would have been like 93, I guess. And he got one of those metal beds, the red beds that was like a full-size bed on the bottom and then a twin on the top. So I'd always wanted a bunk bed, but he got it, of course, the golden child. But anyway, so I was like, I'm going to stay in here with you. I want to stay on the top bunk. And he was fine with that. So he's sleeping on the full-size bed on the bottom, and I'm on the top bunk. So I would always read for a little bit at night before I would go to bed. So after I finished reading, I was going to climb down, go brush my teeth, and then come back in there and go to bed. Well, as I'm climbing down the red ladder, right, the ladder was on this side of the bed. Grant was sleeping up here. As I'm climbing down, I'm watching myself go down the ladder, and this hand jerks out and grabs my ankle. It was a scary old lady, ice cold witchy hand, and I let go and fall backwards, and then the hand goes like this. It goes like back under the covers. I'm only laughing because it's like traumatizing. So I fall back and land on the floor, and I'm just watching this hand like slowly go back under the covers that my brother's under, right? So my mom hears me hit the ground, and she comes running in there, and she's like, what happened? Like, what? Did you fall off the bed? And I'm just like, I was like, her hand. My brother slept through the whole thing, never woke up. Mom's like, whose hand? And I was like, Miss Pike's hand. I knew it was her hand because it was like an old lady witch looking hand, right? Like an old dead lady's hand. I had the handprint around my ankle. Her hand left a print, like an indent where she grabbed it so hard. I was done with the bunk beds after that. I grew up in a haunted house, so every night I'm telling a story about something that happened to either me or one of my family members while living in that house. My mom is known for keeping a very fancy house, as all of our friends called it, and everybody in the extended family, and she was very meticulous about making her bed every morning. Well, my brother and I had already gone to sleep that night. My dad was coming in late from work, so she waited until after we were in bed to take her shower. So she goes and gets her pajamas from her room and then goes into the bathroom, takes a shower and all of that, and then instead of going back to the room, she just changes in the bathroom and then makes a left that goes into the living room. So she came out of the shower and went straight into the living room. Well, my dad came in through the front door that night, and by the time they finally went to bed, he goes to bed first, and she was like doing like brushing her teeth or something like that. And he's like, hey, are you sick or something? And she's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you didn't make the bed today. And she's like, yes, I did. Yes, I did make the bed. And he's like, no, he's like, are you trying to be funny or something? Because it looks like you made the bed in the floor. So my mom walks in there, and the bed had about 4 or 5 rows of pillows. Now remember, this was like the early 90s. Someone had taken all of the pillows and put them in the floor and turned the bed down and everything. So it looked like it had been like turned down by her, but she hadn't even been in there, so she didn't do it at all. So she's like, haha, really funny, like, I know you did this. And he's like, I swear I didn't. He's like, I don't even know how to set these pillows up, like, which is true. My dad was an idiot, didn't know how to do anything. But so someone unmade the bed for her, and although she said she appreciated it, it kind of freaked her out a little bit too. So a second part to this story is like 2 or 3 days go by, and then she's cleaning up the kitchen, and she goes to the back end of the house. And then when she comes back into the kitchen, the newspaper that was on the table had been thrown all over the kitchen, like just completely thrown, like somebody had just ripped it to shreds and thrown it all over the kitchen. So she says out loud, like, hey, like, don't make more messes for me to clean up, like, this is ridiculous. And then after that point, messes weren't really made, but things were still constantly being moved around. I grew up in a haunted house, and every night I'm telling a story about something that happened to me or one of my family members while living in that house. Like I've said before, my brother and I are 5 years apart, so we kind of tormented the hell out of each other daily. Well, one day I was in my room, and I could hear him talking through the door on the outside. I kept my door shut all the time when I was in there by myself, but I could hear him, and it was just like a muffled talk. So I yelled back, what do you want? And he answers, and he like muffles back, and then I tell him, just come in, like, what are you doing? Just come in. Like, I was getting so pissed off that he wouldn't just open the door, and so the door would rattle like that. So I yell back, just open the door, what are you doing? So I finally get up off my bed, and I go over there to him, and mid him talking and rattling the doorknob, I fling the door open and scream, what? And nobody's standing there. So that's how we figured out that she couldn't open doors. Another time that she did that was I was in the bathroom getting ready and had the bathroom door shut, and I hear my mom on the outside of the door talking to me through the door. I had my hands were wet where I was washing my face, and I tell her, I'm like, just open the door, I can't hear you, I can't make out what you're saying. I was like, just open the door's not locked. So the door handle rattles, and I throw the door open again after finally drying off my hands, and nobody's there. Sometimes when she would want in, she would just knock, just like a normal like knock like that for us to open the door. And we would either open the door or we wouldn't. And if we didn't open the door, then she would rattle it like violently where she wanted in. And then once you open the door and let her in, then she was fine and didn't bother us anymore. She just really wanted in. I grew up in a haunted house. Every night I'm telling a new story of what happened to either me or a family member while living in that house. This is story number 10, I guess. I've told some Miss Pike stories, but now I'm going to tell Mr. Pike stories. Remember, I said his stories are kind of scary because he was an ass. So he died later after her. I can't remember how long. I want to say like a year maybe after she died. And when he started doing stuff, it was obvious because it was a male voice. Up until this point, we'd only ever heard her. Only like nice things had happened, but this one is not good. So one night, Grant and I had went to stay at my aunt's house, so it was just my mom and dad home, and my mom said that my dad woke her up in the middle of the night, and he's like leaned over her, and he's like, hey, listen, scares her to death, and she's like, what? And he puts his finger to his mouth, and he's like, shh, listen, and Mom said that she could hear a man talking, like, loud. He wasn't trying to be quiet at all. And not only could they hear him talking, they could also hear what sounded like metallic, like a metal, like a ching, ching, ching. So they couldn't place what that was. And then he's like, do you hear it? And Mom said, yeah, I hear it. What is it? And he's like, I don't know. I think somebody's in the house. So my dad, remember, he was also an ass, got his, and goes to the door, right? So he's listening, and they could hear it, the metallic sound, going downstairs, and then it would come back up the stairs and then back down the stairs. Mom said it kind of almost sounded like a slinky. So when the guy talking got closer to the door, my dad throws the door open and expecting to see someone, and no one's there. Nothing's there. There's no metallic anything. No one's talking or anything. So my dad calls out. He's like, hey, you know, like, who's here or whatever. And the metallic sound starts again, like ching, 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 going down the stairs. So then my dad yells, knock it off. And it stops, like instantly stops. So when I get home the next day, in my room, there's like tracks through the carpet that look like vacuum cleaner tracks, but only one track, not two wheels, just one, just drug in a circle. Now, my room was his room. They were an older couple, and they had separate rooms. So my mom and dad's room was Mrs. Pike's. I had his room, right? So I point out the tracks, ask Mom if she knows what it is. She's like, I have no idea. That's weird. And it looked like someone had drug something through the carpet, right? So my mom is telling her brother about this, and he's like, oh, And my mom's like, what? He's like, I wonder if it's like chains, like if he's dragging like chains around. Which is terrifying. I hope, like, oh my God. But Mom said it did sound like chains being dragged down the stairs and then back up the stairs. So what do you think? Chains? I grew up in a haunted house, and every night I'm telling a story about something that happened to either me or one of my family members while living in that house. I was 16 in 1996, and that's when the new movie Scream came out, and I was a huge fan of it, so every day after school I would come home, make ravioli, and go watch Scream downstairs, which was also the basement. One day I got ahead of schedule, and I went downstairs to start the movie, and I forgot my ravioli upstairs, so I decided to go back up there and get it, and halfway up the stairs, the TV turned off. So I kind of stopped in my tracks because sometimes I could tell if something was going to happen. You just kind of feel it in your chest, and other times it would just happen with no warning. So it kind of caught me off guard. So I turned around to see if maybe like the remote was stuck in the couch, and when I got up it did it or whatever, but I could see the remote on the coffee table. So I make my way back down the stairs. Sorry, I make my way back down the stairs, and as I get to the coffee table, before I could touch the remote, the TV turned back on. So I'm just kind of staring at it, and then the channels start to climb. My dog wants food. Hold on. Now Louis is eating in the background. Anyway, now that he's finished, so the TV channels start to climb. I get the remote. I try to stop it, but I couldn't stop it. I'm pushing all the buttons on the remote. I'm trying to turn the TV off. Nothing is working. And let me just add that we didn't have any like stations downstairs. It was just a TV plugged in so you could have your VCR to watch the movie. So when the channels are climbing, it's just like static, like, you know. So it ejects, the VCR ejects the tape on its own. And then that's when I'm like, wait a minute, like I gotta get the hell out of here. So I turn to go back up the stairs. So I run across the downstairs. I'm heading up the stairs. And as I get to the stairs, there was a wall phone, like telephone on the wall. For all of you kids watching, did y'all see that? What was that just went across my hair? Wait a minute.